Another reason why I left religion, Christianity, fundamentalism, and Calvinistic churches is because the church teaches its members to fat shame. Now, this isn't really a surprise to most people. If you've grown up in any religious group, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, anything, you'll notice how a lot of religions, the majority of them, always focus on women and how they look. Modesty is a big one. Purity culture. Christianity is obsessed. They worship the idea of perfection, which is why coming out of the second denomination with the highest CSA and SA statistics, the Southern Baptist Convention, I developed and was diagnosed with religious OCD. Christianity is obsessed with perfection, obsessed with sin, which is a word that describes imperfection. Women are the target of fat shaming. And it's not just about your size. It's about what you eat, how you exercise, how much you consume. I haven't gone a month in church in 30 years without hearing about what are you allowing into your life. What goes in one ear comes out another. It's all about consumption. Gluttony, one of the 7 deadly sins. And if you just do a simple Google search, which verses in the Bible talk about gluttony? There's a lot of them. And it's ironic that Christianity's obsession with image goes beyond how your body looks. 1 out of 3 people in America are obese. And I don't care what size people are, as long as they're happy, healthy, and living life on their terms. But if you are more than 35 pounds over your allotted age, height, race, and gendered expectation, you do increase cardiovascular, pulmonary, heart, all kinds of leading causes of death in the United States. And there's such an image of perfection required and put on. That's why in the Bible, Jesus talks about hypocrisy. People at church put on a mask of perfection. If you're a woman, people would dye their hair color to hide what their real hair color was. They didn't dye their hair because they enjoyed it, they loved it. They just wanted to change. They wanted to make a fashion statement. No, they did it to hide their age. They did it to hide their imperfections. Instead of celebrating your imperfections and drawing attention to your imperfections and celebrating your imperfections, they hid it. If women, and my mother was one of them, developed her hair going white anywhere from 35 to 45, her hair started to gray. Women like that, for some reason my mother didn't dye her hair. Maybe she liked it. She didn't really go into it, and I was too young to ask then. The pastor's wife would dye her hair because she was 65 years old with white hair, and her husband didn't have white hair yet. So she would dye it to hide her age. Or people would constantly be asking her, if they didn't know her, is this your son? It's so funny. Religion, any religion, but specifically fundamentalist Christianity, is obsessed with body image and just your image in society. I would say that in the churches I went to, half the married wives were so unhappy they wore a mask, metaphorically, to make it through Sunday. There is no way the women I heard talking to my mother about how horribly they were treated by the men in their family. There is no way a normal person could smile with integrity on Sunday morning the way they were treated. I mean, surviving abuse and surviving your spouse cheating on you multiple times. The stress of getting an STI test every 6 months to find out if he actually lied to you. The stress and on their heart and their body. How could they smile with integrity on Sunday morning? So I'm going to start with men first, because church really doesn't focus much at all on male body image. Fundamentalist Christianity supports what I call the alpha male red pill persona of masculinity. You look at conversion therapy, how they expect and beat kids until they look like a stereotypical white, cis, straight man, is all about body shaming. Men are afraid to come out as anything but straight because of how Christianity views men who don't want to have kids and get a wife. I've known men who didn't come out until their 60s because of the body shaming. We call it body dysphoria now, where people are so depressed, attempt suicide, or aren't even alive anymore because of the gender rules and expectations forced on them. Men having to have a perfect body, to be 3% body fat, to have a 6 or 8 pack, to be the fastest runner, the best superb provider. It's all about image. And it's not just body image. It's just image in particular. It's so toxic. Men have to be the epitome of masculinity. If you're not Superman, you're a nobody. And I met a lot of men, young men, anywhere from 18 to 30, who did not fit the stereotypical toxic masculinity trope. They either didn't want to get married or they were married to their careers, and that's perfectly fine. It's just not accepted in fundamentalist Christianity. And these men suffered. All men suffer. Even if you're a carbon copy of an alpha male, you're still suffering. How can you have good mental health when everything you do is being judged? It's kind of the feeling of going to that high school in Euphoria where nobody is authentic. Everyone is so hyper feminine or hyper masculine. There's no in between accepted. There's nobody being their own person. It's all about, do I measure up? And this is where I believe homophobia, transphobia comes from. Male body image. If you're not the stereotypical alpha male toxic version of masculinity, you might as well be a woman. And it's so toxic. I mean, people kill each other over a man being feminine or having more feminine traits, being more nurturing, more emotional, more in tune with their own feelings. That's why men call each other gay if a man is more demonstrative of his feelings or affection toward the people he cares about. Men are so uncomfortable with femininity. They like to hit it. They like to screw it, but they don't want to resemble it. That's how much they hate it. And men struggle their whole lives with not measuring up to the impossible standard of Ken, Barbie's boyfriend. And don't get me wrong, there are some positive stereotypes for Ken and Barbie. Just being who you are. But there's a lot of negative stereotypes too. And the amount of mental anguish men experience because they don't fit into that 20%. I honestly believe it's one of the reasons we have incel red pill culture. Men who don't have the emotional maturity and capacity to understand that men aren't men because of how much muscle mass they are. Men are incels because they want to be a type of man so badly they can't even be a respectable nobody. And I don't believe they're a nobody. That's just how they view themselves. How many incels and just men in general have killed women because they can never accept they don't measure up and shouldn't measure up to toxic gender standards? Men suffer from depression, suicidal tendencies, emotional disorders, anxiety, panic attacks because they don't fit in with the stereotypical Andrew Tate kind of guy. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be around any man who does or fits that profile because they probably don't understand the word no. And if men can't accept they're not an alpha male, or even more hard to handle, finding out you're gay, bi, trans, or pan, and you can't live up to the impossible standard of being Superman, then how many women have suffered because of the anger and the inability to come to terms with who you are? How many women have been married decades to men who could not accept that they aren't a cis straight man? Because, I mean, you watch television shows and movies before 2010. Men are called homophobic slurs if they don't measure up. If they don't like women, you might as well be a woman. And they're not, but their peers see them that way. Why is it so hard for men to come out? Because they have to basically kill, destroy, and basically remove the idea inside of themselves that men can only be this. Men can only be that. They have to basically kill the idea that men have to be a one-fits-all size. They have to believe that gender and orientation and life is a spectrum. And if men can't let go of the toxic, I have to be this, or I'm a failure, everyone is going to suffer. That's why we call it the down low, because there are some men who are so entrenched in the belief that toxic masculinity and alpha masculinity is the only acceptable way to exist. They harm everyone. They lie to their partners. They could be infecting people because there are people who cheat on their spouse and don't use condoms after the fact. How many people's lives have been ruined or even died because men can't accept that there's more than one way to be a man? In my opinion, the only healthy, safe version of a man is a man who accepts himself as he is and pursues the best, healthiest, socially acceptable way to live. And if that's being trans or if that's being bi, then getting on with their life. We need to stop caring so much what everyone else thinks. And if somebody judges or calls you a slur because you don't look or act like Andrew Tate, take it as a compliment, because we all know where Andrew Tate is right now. People who have to constantly mark their own territory when it comes to their race and their sex and gender isn't the kind of person women should feel safe around. Because at the end of the day, if a man has to constantly convince himself he's a man, he probably isn't going to be the kind of guy to respect a no, because the no isn't going to make him feel like a man. Men need to reject the idea that all men must be this. If that's the way the world worked, there would only be one color in a Crayola box. There would be one flavor of ice cream. There would be one gender. But there isn't. And this is where the male entitlement, the male, the male on female violence happens. Because men refuse to be anything but a toxic version of themselves. Luckily, it's become more fashionably and socially acceptable to be something previously they weren't accepted or permitted to be. There's no excuse anymore in countries where it is legal to be non-straight and get married. It's not acceptable anymore to hide. It's okay to take your time to find out, as long as you have the intention of coming out and you don't hurt anyone while you're in the process of coming out. If you're in a country where it's illegal to be gay, where you could face prison time, death, I understand why you can't come out. But if you live in America or any of the progressive northern countries, or even in Europe where it's legal and they're the most accepting people, it's not acceptable to live your whole life in the closet. You can't live a life in the closet without hurting people. And we need to be a society that accepts men and applauds them as much for being trans as they are by being the quarterback on an NFL team. We need to stop making it illegal for trans men or trans women to compete. In this society, especially in America, we don't respect people who aren't Ken or Barbie. And even if they were Ken and Barbie, we would be talking bad things about them behind their back. Because people aren't happy for other people. They try to tear them down. And no one does it better than women. Women are the reason the patriarchy has survived for so long. The patriarchy indoctrinates women to make other women feel like crap. There's very little sisterhood. And if most people in the sisterhood, if they could take another woman's guy, they would, without remorse. Women are lucky to stick up to women. Women don't fight for each other. They fight against each other. And men will never be fully accepted in any possible shade of manhood until we start viewing femininity with the respect it deserves. Because in my mind, men's worst nightmare is waking up as a woman or waking up as a type of person that is very feminine. I'm not kidding. That's why there's so much homophobia. Men's worst nightmare is acting more feminine, which is stupid, but that's the world we live in. I mean, men react to a guy who's emotional and happy and is demonstrative as being a fairy, which is a feminine version of a slur. Why men harm other men who are gay or trans? Because for a man to want to be a woman or act like a woman is viewed as the worst activity a man could do. And our society despises femininity.